to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing Canning 101 with you. Whether you are a beginner canner or an inexperienced canner, no idea where to start, this video is going to be for you. I love canning and I've been canning for over 15 years and it is one of my favorite things to do in the summer with our garden harvest. So let's jump right in and get started on the basics. So first of all, I want to say that you want to prepare and get ready for canning season well in advance so you kind of know what you're getting into and what you're going to do when your garden harvest starts producing and you figure out, what am I going to do with this? That way you are well prepared. You want to make sure that you can with only safe and approved canning recipes. Don't just go on Pinterest and try to find a recipe to follow. Don't just Google a recipe. You want to make sure that you're using safe and approved canning recipes. Now, where do you find these recipes? There's a couple of resources and I'm going to link everything down below so you guys can get started and kind of look and see what stuff you want to use from what websites. The first website is the National Center for Home Preservation. This is a great resource with lots of safe, tested canning recipes. You can find a whole variety of recipes as well as a lot of information on canning. This is a great site to find recipes from. The next website is the Ball website. I suggest that you go to their website or rent some books of theirs from the library. Those are all safe and approved canning recipes. So my pressure canner also came with a manual of safe canning approved recipes. So I like to use some of those recipes in there. Those are tested and trusted and they're going to be safe to use. The other place that I like to find some resource from is a Facebook group called Canning and Preserving with Love. These are safe canning approved recipes. There's a whole group of rebel canners and they kind of do their own thing. They don't follow the resources that I gave you. So I would suggest staying away from that, at least for now. I've been canning for quite a while and I haven't done any rebel canning methods. I just don't feel comfortable with that because they're not safe and approved. I don't want to waste my garden harvest on something that might go bad or not be processed correctly. Also, I'm serving this to my family and I want to make sure that I give them something that is completely safe and tested. When I first got into canning, I did a few things that weren't really very safe. Thankfully, we all survived. It's not enough to say, well, my grandma's been doing that forever, so she survived and it's fine. We'll survive, we're okay. That is not a thought process that I want to follow. My motto is know better, do better. So only follow the safe canning recipes. So there's two types of canning. There's pressure canning and water bath canning. So figuring out what kind of canner that you're going to be needing depends on what you're going to be processing. Things like fruits or high acidic things like tomatoes, salsa, those can all be safely water bathed. Anything like vegetables and meat, you're going to need a pressure canner. So this is the canner that I have. The brand is Presto and it is a 16-quart pressure canner. You can also water bath in this. However, I cannot water bath quart sizes because the water has to come up above the jar 2 inches, and if I do a quart in here, a quart jar, it's not going to cover it enough. They do have taller ones that you can water bath the quart size jars in, but I usually do pints in here. I can pressure can quarts in here, but it depends on what size jars you're going to be using for what, which will depend on what canner you use. There's a brand out there called the All-American canner, and that is like, I think, the top level canner. They're very expensive, but I find that the Presto one is very affordable. I've had this one for over 10 years and it has served me well. It is really nice because it has a pressure dial here that I can actually look on and see my pressure and make sure that my food is up to pressure safely. Some of the canners that don't have these, you have to count the jiggles, and that's a little hard because you gotta really pay attention and you gotta make sure that everything's correct. So I would suggest going one with a dial because it's just a whole lot easier that way. When you first get your canner or start each canning season, make sure you take out the rubber seal and inspect it for any cracks or wears. If there is any sign that it is cracked or shows signs of wear, you're gonna wanna replace it. You don't wanna be pressure canning with a rubber gasket or seal that is not safe. It's gonna compromise the integrity of your canner and your jars inside. The other thing that you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna get your dial tested each year. You can go to your county extension office, Google it to see where yours is in your area, and for a few dollars, they can test your pressure dial to make sure that it's calibrated correctly. If it's off a little bit, they can tell you when a recipe calls for this much pounds of pressure, make sure your dial reads it this much. They also told me that we live at a higher altitude and wrote on a little piece of paper that said when my recipe calls for this pressure, my dial needs to compensate for being off a little bit, plus adding pounds of pressure for my high altitude. So make sure each canning season you go get your dial tested, because if you knock it around, if it's in storage for a while, it may be off a little bit, and you want to make sure that you're processing your jars enough. Now, what type of stove do you have is also going to play a part in what type of canning that you're going to be doing. Now, some people say that you cannot safely can on a glass cooktop. I've done it before, and let's just say I probably won't be doing it again. Read your pressure manual. Read your stove manual to see if that's something that is safe for you to do. We actually switched to a gas stove solely because I wanted to be able to pressure can on my gas stove. So what are the supplies that you're going to be needing for canning? Well, obviously you're going to need some jars. I would recommend buying them new. I'm kind of a brand snob. I like the Ball and Kerr brand. After the canning supply shortage that happened a few years ago, I saw all these other brands that I'd never seen before popping into stores, but I'm gonna stick with the Ball or the Kerr brand. So where can you find these? Well, I've been noticing there are a lot more in stock in stores now than there were last year and the year before. I suggest every time you go to the store, just buy a case of them. They come with the lids and the rings. You can get quarts, you can get quarts, you can get pints, you can get wide mouth, you can get narrow mouth, depending on what you're going to be canning. It doesn't really matter which one you get. I do find that pickles are a lot easier to can in wide mouth. Some people have a preference. It's totally up to you. I don't recommend buying used canning jars just because you don't know the quality that you're going to be buying. You want to make sure that you inspect them for any chips or cracks. You're not going to be able to can in those. Sometimes mine end up with a little bit of nicks, and I end up just using those for storage and not for canning. You can go to thrift stores, you can find them on Facebook Marketplace, but if you're just getting into it, I suggest that you start out with brand new ones. They're pretty affordable, and if you just get a case or two every time you go to the grocery store, it's going to be a lot easier to do it that way. Now, for lids, there was a lid shortage and it was very hard to find lids. Like I said, I'm kind of a brand snob and I only stick with the Kerr and the Ball brand. Now, I just want to say, I repeat, do not order them online. I learned the hard way. I went to a website that posed as the Ball website. Ball does not sell their supplies on their website. So if you find a website that looks like they're selling Ball supplies, including Amazon, do not buy it from them online. I bought one and it said Made in USA, had the Ball picture, and when I got the shipping notification, it came from China. So after fighting with the company for false advertising, I was able to win and get my money back by threatening to file a PayPal claim. I also ordered from Amazon, showing it was the Ball brand. When it shipped, it said it was from China, so I canceled my order. Scour your stores. Let your friends and family know that you're on the lookout for lids. I've been seeing them more in stores, so every time I go, I just pick up a box or two of lids to make sure that I have enough. Now, if you can't find any in the store, there is one brand that I do approve of buying online, and that is the U-Line brand. I was desperate. These were made in USA. I trust the U-Line company. My parents buy stuff for their business from them. They're located in California, and I was able to buy these lids. They're pretty decent, but again, brand snob, I like to stick with these, but these are great to use in a pinch if you can't find them in store. I do want to say, do not, and I repeat, do not reuse your lids. They are meant for a one-time use. Now, I do save them to use for storage after my jars have already been opened or storing other dry goods in the pantry or things in the refrigerator. Don't reuse your lids. Now, you can buy reusable lids, and they are the Tatler lids. I know there's a couple other brands. I got a pack to try out. I think they're pretty okay. It takes a little bit of getting used to, so I'd recommend if you're a first-time canner, maybe stick to these just to kind of get the canning method down, and then maybe you can branch out and get some of these. I think these are a great reusable option where you'd have just about an endless supply of lids and rings. So as far as rings go, you won't need nearly as many rings as you do for your lids. You can reuse these multiple times. Now, after your jar has processed and sealed properly, 24 hours later, you want to remove your rings. You do not store your jars with your rings on. This is only to keep that lid in place until your jar has properly sealed. Once it's done so, 24 hours later, you can go ahead and remove your rings. You want to wash them and dry them right away, or else they will rust. Over time, they will rust and you'll have to get rid of them. You can buy the lids and rings together in boxes. They come with your jars, so I don't suggest trying to get a bunch of these to start out with if you already got jars with rings, because you can reuse them over and over and over. The other items that you'll need is a jar lifter. You need a jar lifter because you don't want to be lifting your hot jars with a hot pad or something else. These are pretty reasonably priced, and also a funnel to easily fill your jars. This is all I have for my canning supplies. You can buy kits, I'll link one down below from Amazon that has a lot of other fancy things that are great, but if you just want the basics, I would recommend these two. So that's all the tips I have for you today. Remember, can safely, find safe approved recipes. Get started now in collecting your supplies and figuring out what you're going to be doing. If you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos. Share this video with a friend who might be getting into canning, and that might be helpful for them too. Thanks for watching, and happy canning.